I thought my husband was drowning in debt until I found out he was using my money to buy champagne, luxury hotel stays, and diamond earrings for another woman. And the worst part wasn't even the affair. It was the fact that while I was cutting back on everything, comparing supermarket prices, skipping my own prescription refill, and telling our grown-up daughter, your dad's just under a lot of pressure at the moment, he was out there building some ridiculous fantasy life with his mistress using money he had absolutely no right to touch. But what Mark didn't know was that I'd already prepared for the day he betrayed me. For 26 years, I loved that man like marriage was something sacred, not perfect, not easy, sacred. I stood beside him through redundancy scares, his dad's funeral, his back operation, the years when his confidence disappeared and he could barely stand looking at himself in the mirror. I was the one who kept everything running. I built a bookkeeping business from our dining room table, taking calls between cooking dinner, sorting invoices while the washing machine was going, paying school costs, keeping up with the mortgage, and making sure nobody ever saw the fear I carried around at 3 a.m. Mark used to say, "I honestly don't know what I'd do without you, Claire." And I believed him. Before I carry on, I always like knowing who's here with me. So if you're listening right now, tell me in the comments which city you're watching from. I read those messages more than you probably realise. Because if you've ever loved someone a little too faithfully, this story is going to hit you right in the chest. At first, the changes were small. A phone suddenly placed face down, a shower taken the second he walked through the front door, late meetings that somehow always happened on Fridays, a new aftershave that felt completely wrong for him. Too young, too sharp, the sort of scent that walked into the room before he did. I noticed, of course I noticed. But women like me, women who have spent years holding families together with exhaustion, determination, and a bit of stubbornness, we become experts at explaining away the things that hurt. He's stressed, he's tired, he's embarrassed he's not earning what he used to. That's what I told myself. Then one Tuesday morning, I opened our banking app with a mug of tea in my hand, and every bit of warmth left my body. There were payments I didn't recognise, a luxury hotel, a restaurant where dinner for two cost more than what we'd normally spend on a weekly food shop, a designer boutique I'd only ever walked past and admired through the window. At first, I thought it had to be fraud, and strangely enough, I felt relieved. For half a second, I actually felt relieved, because fraud was easier to accept than betrayal. But when I started looking through the statements, the truth began appearing slowly, like a bruise spreading beneath the skin, small transfers. Then bigger ones, cash withdrawals, gift purchases, weekend spending in places Mark had told me he was away for work meetings. My tea went cold in my hands. I remember sitting there staring at those numbers while the kitchen clock carried on ticking like nothing had happened, like my entire marriage hadn't just cracked open right there between the toaster and the fruit bowl. Still, I said nothing. I didn't want assumptions, I wanted proof. So I started quietly. I printed statements when he was out, I matched dates with receipts, I checked old emails, booking confirmations, and loyalty accounts. The man had been careless in the way people become careless when they're convinced the person beside them would never think to look. And then I found her, not face to face, not yet, a name hidden under a fake contact on his phone records. Frequent calls, late night messages. And then through one stupid tagged photo online, I saw her, a woman in a cream-coloured dress holding a shopping bag from the exact boutique showing up on our account. Her hand was resting on his arm. His watch was visible in the picture, the watch I bought him for our 25th wedding anniversary. I had to sit down. My knees actually gave way, like someone had pulled the ground out from underneath me, because cheating is one kind of pain. But seeing another woman wearing the evidence of your sacrifice like it's some sort of prize, that is a completely different kind of humiliation. Still, I kept digging, and that's when the betrayal became something even darker. This wasn't an affair that had just happened. This was planned. He had told her he was nearly free, that he was stuck with me, that I controlled the money, that once he sorted a few things out, they'd have the house by the coast, the holidays, the easy life they both imagined. I know this because I found the messages, every disgusting promise, every lie he told about me. She wrote, "I'm tired of waiting, you said by summer." And he replied, "Trust me. Once the accounts are sorted, we'll never have to worry again." The accounts, not his savings, not his bonus, The accounts mine the money he was spending included the retained earnings from my business, the emergency fund my mum left me, and the deposit we'd put aside to help our daughter if she ever wanted to move out of renting and buy her own place. He wasn't just betraying my heart, he was stripping away my life. That night he came home smiling, actually smiling. He kissed me on the cheek and said, "You look shattered, babe." Long day? I looked at the man I'd loved for more than half my life and realised something that chilled me. He no longer saw me as a person. I was the support system. The roof over his head, the security, the bank account, the woman who made his comfortable life possible while he handed pieces of me to someone else. So I smiled back and I said, "Just the usual." That was the moment he lost. Not when I discovered everything, not when I saw the messages, not even when I found out about the money. He lost when I went quiet, because quiet women are dangerous when they've finished crying. Over the next 10 days, I became the version of myself Mark had always underestimated. Organised, careful, calm. I copied every statement, every receipt, every message I could legally access. I sent files to a private email account. I photographed hotel bookings, gift orders, taxi receipts, and every little expense he thought would disappear into the background. I documented how often he used business-linked cards and which transfers came from accounts he believed were ours. Accounts he never bothered to understand, accounts I had protected years earlier after taking advice from my late mother's solicitor. Mark used to laugh at me for keeping paperwork. "Claire, honestly, nobody reads the small print except you." He was right. I did read it. That's why I knew something he had completely forgotten. My name was the main signatory on the business reserve accounts. The inheritance money my mum left me had never legally become shared spending money. And the access I had once allowed him to have could be removed the moment misuse was proven. I booked an appointment with a solicitor the very next morning. Her office overlooked a grey little street covered in rain. And I remember sitting there holding a folder so tightly my fingers were aching. Part of me still hoped she'd tell me there had been some misunderstanding, that I was jumping to conclusions, that 26 years together couldn't possibly fall apart because of screenshots, hotel invoices and bank statements. But instead, she looked me straight in the eye and said, "Claire, this is financial abuse. And if he's planning to move more money, you need to act before he realises, you know." I drove home in silence, the windscreen wipers moving back and forth, my chest tight. A woman in her 50s should not have to learn that she can become invisible to the man who once held her hand in a hospital room and promised her forever. That was my lowest point, not the affair, not even the money. It was realising that while I was protecting the life we built, Mark had been quietly preparing his way out of it. I sat in my car outside our house with the engine switched off, rain tapping softly against the windscreen, and I cried until my whole body hurt. My face was swollen, my back was aching, and for the first time in years, I allowed myself to admit something I'd been avoiding. I wasn't frightened of losing him. I was frightened of accepting that he had already lost me a long time ago, and just when that thought nearly broke me, something inside me changed. Not anger, not revenge, clarity. By the end of that week, my solicitor had worked alongside my financial advisor, security alerts were updated, access was reviewed, transfers were stopped, emergency savings were protected, a proper legal record was created. I wasn't acting because I wanted to punish him anymore. I was acting because I finally respected myself enough to protect what was mine. Mark, meanwhile, was wandering around the house like a man who genuinely believed his own performance deserved applause. On Sunday evening, he said he needed to pop out for an hour. I knew exactly where he was going. He came back just before midnight, smelling of expensive aftershave and terrible choices. The next morning, everything changed. At 8:17, his first card payment was declined. At 8:24, a transfer failed. At 8:31, my phone rang. I let it ring twice. Then I answered. "Claire, what the hell is going on?" he snapped. "My card's been blocked. I can't access the reserve account." I was standing in the kitchen, sunlight falling across the counter where I had once filled out school forms, wrapped birthday presents, and planned every tiny detail of the life he took for granted. I said calmly, "Because you forgot one thing, Mark." He went silent, and I said, "It was never yours to spend." There was a pause so long I could hear him breathing. Then came the act. Confusion first. "What are you talking about?" Then anger. "Are you spying on me now?" Then panic, sharp, desperate. "Claire, Don't do this. I need that money released today. Need, not sorry, need. I nearly laughed. Instead, I said, you needed a wife too. That didn't stop you. He rushed home in less than 20 minutes. When he walked through the front door, I already had the folder waiting on the table. Statements, receipts, screenshots, Fotter's mums, every single lie arranged neatly in order, exactly the way he used to tease me for doing. He stared at the evidence, and all the colour drained from his face. For the first time, the man who always had an excuse had absolutely nothing to say. Claire, listen, he started. It's not what you think. I leaned back and said, then this is your chance. Tell me what it is. He opened his mouth, closed it, looked down at the papers again, and then, just like every person caught in their own lies, he reached for the easiest thing. Blame. You've been cold for years. Cold. I had worked through migraines, through grief, through menopause, through sleepless nights, through looking after his mother, through fixing problems he never even knew existed. I had carried that home with both hands while this man spent my money trying to impress another woman. And now he wanted to call me cold because I wasn't smiling while he betrayed me. I looked at him and said, you don't get to rewrite our entire marriage just because you got caught. That was when he finally understood. The money was gone, the access was gone, and soon AB would be gone too. But the twist he never saw coming was this. The woman he had been funding stayed loyal for exactly 48 hours after the money stopped. 48 hours, the moment the gifts stopped arriving, everything changed. No more sweet messages, no more promises about the future, no more baby. We'll get through this. Because what she loved wasn't Mark. It was the lifestyle my money created around him. And when that fantasy disappeared, so did she. One of her messages, which later became part of the legal evidence, said everything. You told me you had money. I'm not signing up for drama and debt. Drama and debt. That was all he was once the account stopped keeping his fantasy alive. The divorce moved much faster than Mark expected. The financial investigation backed up everything I had documented. My solicitor presented the misuse clearly. The court wasn't interested in his excuses, his tears, or his sudden claims that he had been confused about who owned what. Confused people don't repeatedly book luxury hotel suites and buy designer jewellery over 7 months. That wasn't confusion, that was a choice. He lost access, he lost control, he lost credibility. And because some of those transactions involved protected money connected to my business and my inheritance, the consequences weren't just embarrassing, they were serious. He had to repay what he could sell assets. Accept arrangements he never imagined a woman like me would force him to face. That was the question people always asked me afterwards. Did I enjoy watching him fall? No, not in the way people imagine. I didn't celebrate his downfall. I didn't dance around the wreckage. I simply refused to let myself burn alongside him. The real victory came months later, on a quiet morning, in a smaller home that belonged completely to me. I made myself a cup of tea, opened the curtains, and realised something I hadn't felt in years: peace. No lies coming from the next room, no tension sitting in the walls, no phone turned face down on the table, just peace. My daughter came over that afternoon and hugged me for what felt like ages. Then she whispered, "Mum, I'm proud of you." And somehow that broke me in the gentlest way, because for so long I thought strength meant putting up with things, staying, absorbing the pain, making excuses. Holding everything together even when nobody was holding me. But I finally understood something. Sometimes strength is the moment you say, no more, not with my heart, not with my money, not with my life. I didn't freeze the accounts because I wanted revenge. I froze them because I finally understood that protecting myself wasn't cruel, it was long overdue. So if you're listening to this and there's someone in your life who has been calling your sacrifices support while treating your loyalty like something they can spend whenever they want, listen carefully. Love should never require you to close your eyes. Marriage should never require you to disappear. And betrayal does not become less painful just because it happens behind a nice front door in a respectable neighbourhood. At the end of it all, the woman Mark underestimated became the woman he could never manipulate again. And that kind of justice, you can't buy it, not with money, not with gifts, not with champagne, not with diamonds. So tell me, what would you have done if you were in my position? Would you have confronted him the moment you discovered the truth? Or would you have stayed quiet, gathered everything, and protected yourself first? And do you think someone like Mark deserves another chance after a betrayal this deep? If this story stayed with you, give it a like, share it with someone who might need this reminder, subscribe for more real life stories that cut close to the bone, and tell me what you honestly think in the comments. And if you've ever had to choose yourself after giving everything to someone who didn't value it, Abe, I hope you never feel guilty for surviving.